You know, everybody's talking about WrestleMania 39. It's the biggest wrestling weekend of the year. But you know what? We're going to actually talk about something that might be just a little bit bigger here coming up. That is Nonstop Action Wrestling. And they're now announced show for Zenith, which is going to take place on May the 27th. We touched upon it on the last Sportswire radio show with 1/4 of the Nonstop Action Wrestling Tag Team Champions from the Society, the Lawman, Kyle Kennedy. Also going to get into a big weekend coming up here and so we've got a huge asylum ahead, plus much, much more. And one of our favorites here from management, always giving us the opportunities to speak with one of our favorite companies around here, does a phenomenal job. He needs no further introduction, but we're going to give it to it anyway. So, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report. Number one level sports show from Nonstop Action Wrestling Management, Nonstop, Never Stop, and also from the Society, that is Eric's Notes. My friend, welcome back.
It's an absolute pleasure to speak to you as always, Tom.
I appreciate that. Check's definitely in the mail. Obviously, we'll pay the Western Union fees, everything else in there. But good to be with you. Obviously, an interesting week here for Nonstop Action Wrestling. We've got some very, very good news, some also stuff coming up this weekend. And obviously, I want to get right to the bottom of it here, MX Nights, for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio. We kind of touched upon it with the Lawman, Kyle Kennedy, on Wednesday's show. But May 27th, Zenith is going to take place. And talk about this, and obviously we're all excited about it now that we've got a date that we can certainly look to and certainly build up here on Sportswire for the next several weeks.
Absolutely. So we are absolutely elated to be able to say that we've managed to get things reorganized for Zenith, and we've confirmed the new date, which is the 27th of May. We are going to be announcing the matches very, very shortly. I think we've done an excellent job reorganizing things, and I need to definitely give some credit to our creative team on that. They've done an amazing job pulling a show together, and we cannot wait to see everybody there. We always have a good turnout, and we're looking forward to seeing each and every one of you.
Absolutely, no question about it. And I actually said with the Lawman on Wednesday, tell me your thoughts on this. I actually think, in a way, it's going to work out better for the company because here's why. May 27th, in a way, I kind of think this is going to be the official or unofficial kickoff of summer here for the pro wrestling scene, especially here at NSAW, because you think about that weekend here in America. It's always a great weekend. You think about Memorial Day weekend. You think about the UK again. The weather's nice. The weather's warm. People are in good moods. You know, you think about April still. You never really know. But I think in a lot of ways that May 27th, this is going to be the unofficial kickoff for summer here, and Nonstop Action Wrestling is going to start that party for us here. I mean, talk about that, your thoughts.
Absolutely. I mean, this year the aim is to only get bigger and better, and we've got some of the best UK talent right now. We've got we've got the best up-and-comers, which we can touch on a little when we go into the, we've got Lockdown in the Asylum coming up tomorrow with our rising stars, that I'm sure that will put on an absolutely fantastic match. Again, some of the best rising stars in the UK scene coming in to get involved in that battle royal, and it is a show you're not going to want to miss.
Yep, no shows you're never going to want to miss with Nonstop Action Wrestling. That's what I've learned at this point, whether it's in the Asylum, whether it's a chance to go and buy a ticket for those, obviously, at the Be Strong Performance Center in Swinton. All Nonstop Action Wrestling shows literally are nonstop, never stop.
I couldn't agree more, Tom. But coming on to like what we're wanting to do for the rest of the year, we are hoping to get a lot more done in terms of our pay-per-views. We've got after Zenith, we'll have another 3 shows lined up this year, which we are working on the details for. We've got a couple of things in place, but I'm under very strict instructions not to spoil anything.
Yeah, don't spoil anything. I always say at this point to people, I say, if you know something and you can't say it at this point, don't say it. Don't incriminate yourself. This is the
Absolutely.
last place, especially on Sportswire, because you know that word will travel and it'll come through the grapevine that you said something. So make sure that you don't do that.
Don't worry, Mr. Snow. I'm keeping my mouth shut. I'm doing as I'm told.
All right, there, and I do have a comment here from our friend Michael De Niro knows, who says it's a shame it was postponed, but I'm glad it was resolved. And like I said, this is actually going to be better for people because this is now going to be the unofficial kickoff for summer. Because you think about, obviously, you got Wimbledon going on around that time. You got, obviously, British Open had just passed, but now you're going to think about the wrestling season itself. We're all kind of right now focused on WrestleMania 39, and maybe we would have got lost in the shuffle. But now we're going to be bigger, we're going to be better, we're going to be better, and it's going to be an even better experience. And all nonstop action wrestling shows, especially those big shows, those pay-per-views, are always the best. And I think this is going to be, as I always say, the best is yet to come. And a rising tide will always lift all boats. And May 27th is going to be that. And I want to talk about May 27th because it's going to be an interesting, I have no doubt, 2 weeks with our world champion, our world-class champion, Disciple, the Wrecking Crew, because the prior weekend, we're going to see him putting up his GT Ministries championship against Bentley in sort of a match where basically if Bentley loses, he joins Disciple's group in GT Ministries. But if Bentley wins and his team wins his match, well, Bentley takes the title. And I have no doubt that on May 27th, we'll see Disciple in action, undoubtedly putting up that championship. So our champion's going to have a busy next couple of weeks, I have no doubt.
Absolutely. And just on that, I would like to definitely throw my opinion in there, as it were.
Yes, please do. Please do.
The
A lot
Wrecking
of
Crew
people
is
are going to
definitely
be
get
hearing
another
about
member.
this.
The Wrecking Crew is absolutely going to have a new recruit after that match. I have seen Disciple in action. I've seen what he does in non-stop action wrestling. I've seen what he does in GTM. He is going home with that belt. There is no question of that. And I think Bentley could potentially even stand to learn quite a lot from him.
You know, it's funny you said this because we had Philip Michael on, who Bentley faced off with in Bolton Town Wrestling, which I think is one of the best matches I've seen yet the entire year. And I recommend any wrestler, any wrestling fan, check that out on there on YouTube. And even the Guiding Light, Isaiah Quinn, somebody we've had on many times on Sportswire, said this was a match that you had to go check out. It certainly did a lot for both wrestlers. But I kind of feel like Bentley's been the almost guy. You know, I've had Bentley on so many times. I've had Disciple on, obviously, many, many times. You know how much I love Disciple. But Bentley here for a second. It's really, to me, MX Ice, this is about Bentley because Bentley's the guy that has had so many title matches. He's been in so many big matches. And I always make the running joke here for the older wrestling fans. He's almost like the Lex Luger of basically modern day wrestling. He just, for whatever reason, in the main event, he's always there. And he can't win. He's the literally almost guy.
Absolutely. And I think that shows you something that sort of Disciple has that Bentley doesn't there, and it is that drive to finish things. Bentley's very, very talented, and, you know, hats off to him. He's done what he's done for a long time, and he's very good at it. But from going from that to stepping to a champion, is a completely different ball game, especially when you've got someone like Disciple who's on the warpath that he is.
He's always on the warpath. He is always on the warpath.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's not the right person to test it against.
And I think that Disciple, even his match with Jack Johnson that just took place, I know the outcome was a little bit suspect, but certainly that match just shows you the abilities that Disciple has. And as always, I have to bring it up, he has the best spine buster in the business, hands down. So, you know, that spine buster, you know, whoever's going to be in there is going to feel that. I do have some comments, so let me get to them. Matt Royale, who I'm sure you have an opinion on, says, "Good evening, Mr. Bryce, MX Knights. An individual that I have no doubt could be seeing Disciple at some point again," says, "Hello there." And also Jenny Hayes. Jenny, I know, is working on some new music upcoming. Of course, she is always a huge part of things in Enso and also in the society. I guess you could say society fellow member. Hello, MX Knights. Also, Michael Knowles says, I mean, he was on a roll, but he's lost a few matches recently. That role he had, he's slowly slipping away. And I mean, Disciple, of course. Well, I think he's talking about he lost a match in UKW, and he's talking about a match with Jack Johnson a few weeks back. But I would still say, though, Disciple, when he's a champion, when he has that title on the line, you look at the last 6 months, the run that Disciple has had. Listen, Gareth Angel, who I'm sure you can have an opinion on. I mean, I've had Gareth Angel on many different times here throughout these different streams, and we saw him at the last GT Ministry show in the Fountains Church, in the crowd, and he still hasn't really addressed Disciple about maybe going back in a ring in GT Ministries. And he obviously announced with us that he'll be at Deadline coming up, being in their Rumble. He was next to Connor Cage, but he hasn't really quite addressed when he might want to crack at Disciple. So that could, I would say, be a feather in the cap of the current champions here in GT Ministries and Ensler, that is Mr. Disciple. But I do have a question for you, and that's from Matt Royale. And I want to talk about this for a second because obviously it's kind of, I guess, the brother or sister show, whatever you might want to call it, of Nonstop Action Wrestling. There's Deadline, April the 29th here. We're about a month or so away from that, 29 days. And he says, with Deadline brewing, MX Nights, is there a match on the card that you are most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to watching the society stomp out each and every individual insect that step in the ring with them.
All right. Well, I mean, a couple of those matches. The first, let's talk about for those tag team championships. We saw Remus Kane and the Upgrade Callum and Jakester to face off with the Phantom of the Outlaw team of Phantom Phoenix and Owen Carter. We've had both guys on here over the past several weeks. And I mean, what's your opinion on that match? I mean, Phantom of the Outlaw, we saw a little taste of that last week in the Asylum there at Be Strong Performance Center there in Sweden, where we saw Remus and the Phantom Phoenix lock up a little bit. I mean, but what's your thoughts there in that match?
I'm not quite sure what the intention was behind it. It seems almost disingenuous to put the society against, and I mean this politely, two people who, let's say, they're not wet behind the ears yet. I think you definitely need to be earning your way to that spot. And the fact that, I mean, we don't mind. I'll quite happily let them, throw the belt on the line because I know it's in no danger. These two are not going to come close to taking those belts away. And it will just be fun to remind them how much hard work and dedication you need to put in before you deserve to touch those.
It's an interesting point that you made as we are here with, from management, Nonstop Action Wrestling's MX Nights. And as always, we thank MX Nights for the opportunity to be with us here and cover Nonstop Action Wrestling. If you like what you hear from Nonstop Action Wrestling, please give them a like and follow on Facebook at Nonstop Action Wrestling. Also, NSAW Wrestling UK on Instagram, NSAW_UK on Twitter, and also YouTube, where you can watch undoubtedly much, much more of Nonstop Action Wrestling's great shows, especially a huge Asylum and Lockdown ahead. So all great stuff there ahead. Please follow and support our friends at Nonstop Action Wrestling. But that's the point that I've made, objectively speaking, that you come into this business and you've obviously got to pay your dues. You've obviously got to go out there. You've got to do different things. And Phantom of the Phoenix's first match, essentially, is a title match. Owen Carter's had, I think, one or so match years, or maybe one or two matches at most. And these guys are basically walking into a championship match. This is what a lot of wrestlers that have come on Sportswire have said, and also through the grapevine, off the air and off the record, that these are new kids on the block. These are trainees with minimal experience, quote unquote. Not my words, but I've heard that through the grapevine. I mean, what do you make of this then, that these guys are walking into a title match against veterans like Remus Kane and the Upgrade Callum and Jakester?
As I mentioned, I think it's incredibly disingenuous. And I think the management in WAS absolutely want a very good show. And they're right to, because it's a fantastic cause that they're raising money for, and not to take away from that event and the importance around what they are raising money for. However, they could have gotten a better match, putting someone in the ring who was a more suitable team. I don't want to see two veterans absolutely brutalized to essentially kill them. This is not a fair fight. I'm a little concerned that somebody's going to phone the police afterwards.
Well, I mean, listen. I mean, obviously, I know we're in a tough economy all throughout the world, so maybe they'll have to come up with the money somehow in some way. I guess.
Let's hope they have a personal ambulance on standby.
You know what? I certainly stay tuned for that. Obviously, we'll find out. WrestleSociety.hunt on Instagram, like their page on Facebook at Wrestling Appreciation Society. But I do have some comments here, so you certainly fired up the storm here. Michael Knowles says, no doubting his ability, but like I said to him, and I will again, what goes up will eventually come crashing down. I have noticed a few losses. Guess I was correct about Disciple. Yes, Disciple has lost a couple of matches, but again, when it comes to that championship, he's been money in those matches. The lawman Kyle Kennedy, who I'm going to get to here in a few minutes once again, Mr. Sportswire himself, obviously 1/4 of those tag team champions, and he's in a match that might be one of the most emotional matches yet upcoming in maybe all of professional wrestling. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Jenny Hayes says they do remind me of cockroaches. Well, that's an interesting point. Speaking of things, Sammy Rice, who was with us not too long ago, obviously referee for ENSO and Wrestling Appreciation Society, says, oh, that's the wrong comment. Insect, last time I checked, we all walk on 2 feet. He also then goes on and says, even I'll admit, we're throwing our boys in at the deep end. However, I think they'll show Remus and Callum a thing or two. We're also brewing some fantastic up-and-coming talent. I'd love to see the society get humbled a little. Your reaction to something like that?
That's all well and good. You may indeed be some fantastic up and coming talent is indeed brewing at WAS. They're not there yet. And let me be incredibly clear. There is no reason for the society to be humble at that event. They are surrounded by people who should be on their knees, thanking them for the opportunity to stand near them, let alone step in that ring with them.
Well, I actually have one suggestion for the society. Actually, I thought this would be something that everybody could agree upon. If you guys are going to do, I guess, a national anthem of sorts, why not have Jenny Hayes actually open the show up and sing it? That would just be my actual thought there. How about that? Can everybody agree on that? Because Jenny's got some of the best pipes in the business, and I thought kind of how everybody opens up WrestleMania, you hear the American national anthem, or when they had it in Toronto, they had the Canadian national anthem. So I would just think, well, if you're going to have a big show like this, why not have Jenny open it up here? But hey, that's just my thoughts. What do I know, right? Connor Cage says here, definitely a trial by fire by the sounds of it. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment that this tag team championship between Kane and Majakester against Phantom Phoenix and Owen Carter is kind of basically a trial by fire. Kind of also, by the way, tongue-in-cheek, more forgettable Journey album. That's actually the last Journey album with Steve Perry on vocals. So that's kind of a little trivia question there for somebody. Because I did actually, in America, I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire years ago. I tried out for it. So that's kind of a funny point. But yeah, that was funny. But Remus Kane, speaking of things here, says, don't forget to mention you need to be the toughest, most brutal there is. Good to see you step out of from the shadows, my friend. He also goes on and says, well, I'm certainly no stranger to the police. Prepare our legal defense after we murder Wrestling Appreciation Society. Well, I mean, do you condone that? Because, I mean, Sammy Rice obviously was in a coma for a few weeks. I mean, I don't know if on Sportswire we can certainly allow the Phantom Phoenix and Owen Carter to be murdered here on Deadline. I mean, any thoughts there to that comment by Mr. Kane?
I would say I don't think it would be murder. At worst, it would be manslaughter. We wouldn't mean to take it too far, but sometimes these younger ones don't know when to stay down. And there is only so long you can keep the boot on the throat before the ambulance needs calling.
Oof, that's a kind of a painful thought here, to say the least. I want to get to some more comments here. I got a ton of them here, surprisingly. Skulls, all the way from the EWF in California, says hello, and I think I have merchandise on the way to wear from him. So it's another wrestler add to the list, to the bucket list, and he says hello. I think he's trying to come out to the UK next year, so we'll see. Michael says, I have my ticket booked for Deadline. Should be a good show. Jim Duggan. I don't know what Jim Duggan has anything to do with this. Okay, we'll leave that at that. Jenny says, I do write my own bars, could do a diss track for Wrestling Appreciation Society. Also, Callum Majakester says, my favorite NB. Is that a inside reference, NB? What is it? May I ask?
It's a shortened term for non-binary people.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I really
No, it's fine.
apologize. I want to make sure I get that all correct. So it might
No, it's fine.
obviously want to make sure because I don't want to, certainly want to make sure everybody we're all equals on Sportsfire. I want to make sure everybody's equally respected and represented. I guess I could safely say Sammy Rice, right? Because it's Sean Rice, Sammy Rice. If you could keep it to just an ass whooping, that would be great. I can't be bothered with the messy paperwork.
That I can respect. That I can respect.
That was a good one. I mean, at least we're in a little bit of a better mood here in Sportswire. Killing in the name of. Well, I guess it could be the society killing in the name of the Phantom of the Opera. By the way, great song from Rage Against the Machine, and certainly I would have said slaughter, not murder, but never say never. But also, Remus says that's news to me, Richard. Still, I'll accept manslaughter. No fun there. Boy, that's certainly we're really strong on Sportswire tonight. We're talking about murder. We're talking about insects. We're talking about a whole list of things. But let's dial it down a bit because speaking of the society, I am sure that you caught. How can I put it? The suddenly abrupt appearance from Donnie Franchise on Wednesday's show toward the middle to the end of our segment with the lawman Kyle Kennedy. And, MX Knights, I've been doing this for about 4.5 years on Sportswire Radio. I have interviewed a lot of different people in my career. I have interviewed well-known musicians that have had big record deals. I've had big-time wrestlers, professional athletes, even politicians here in New York that have been elected to public office. But I've never seen anything as emotional to what I saw between Donnie Franchise and the lawman Kyle Kennedy. And I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. And that very well could be a treat of what we're going to see at the University of Huddersfield on April the 29th, 28 days from tomorrow. You have an opinion. I know on it. You know the lawman, maybe better than anybody. Obviously, here from the society and certainly in your role as management. And you have to talk about what we saw Wednesday night because you're basically the first person to get a chance publicly to comment on this. So give me your reactions and where do we go from here between these two individuals that were former best friends, brothers? They were like family. And again, maybe the most emotional thing that even left the lawman Kyle Kennedy speechless last night on Sportswire Radio.
Yeah, that wasn't a good moment. I have got to be honest with you. I'm not terribly impressed that it happened. I'm not impressed in the way that Donnie feels he can emotionally manipulate anyone near me. Now, Mr. Kennedy is an old and dear friend. He came to us at a time where he was broken and had no one because they left. We are there to fill that void. We have helped him understand that he can learn and grow and that it's okay to feel this rage and it's okay to find the person causing that rage and it's okay to make sure they understand just how much they hurt you. Donnie is a man who seeks to grab attention from the cape that, his friend is wearing. He's very much realized that Mr. Kennedy is well come into his own. He is a measure beyond belief in the UK wrestling scene. In such a short space of time, the things he's done, things that not many people can, hold a candle to. And the fact that Donnie's only weapon is to keep being this emotionally manipulative narcissist, it's gone on for too long. And Deadline will be the end of that because he will not be able to be so pedantic again from a hospital bed.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. I have a ton of comments on this, and I knew this was going to happen, but do you think this might be something that Donnie Franchise is going to ultimately regret in going down this personal road where the lawman Kyle Kennedy has been taken to a place that we've never seen him in? I mean, he was left speechless. I mean, the lawman Kyle Kennedy, in a sense, I mean, it could be for Donnie Franchise. Maybe it's be careful what you wish for because, again, we saw a side of him that might just like you said, when you guys picked up the lawman Kyle Kennedy, he was in a state that nobody saw, and maybe he was taken back to that state, and on April the 29th, he could very well take it out on his former best friend, his former brother, and somebody who he never thought he was going to have to do this to.
Absolutely, and this is it. I am, for the first time, a little concerned for one of the lawman's opponents. I'm concerned of what is going to happen to Donny. I do think he's going to regret it, because I think behind all this, he's just a scared little boy who wants his best friend back. And he knows he did wrong. And that's why, when the 29th comes, he's going to stand in that ring and he's going to take his punishment.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to definitely find out here. And of course, I want everybody to follow Nonstop Action Wrestling as well at Nonstop Action Wrestling on Facebook, NSAW Wrestling UK on Instagram, NSAW_Rest_UK on Twitter, also YouTube. Please like their pages. And also on Sportswire Radio, give us a like and follow on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. Closing in on that 600 follower milestone. Thank everybody for support. YouTube also gaining some subscribers here and there, drips and drabs. Appreciate that also at Sportswire Radio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our content on sportnarium.com/pirate. I'll be back with some WrestleMania coverage coming up here about 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:30 a.m. UK time with the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, Chris Belcher and Andy York, and also Randy Dillon, also from Sportswire. So we'll talk a little bit about the card, plus much, much more. On Sunday, I'll be back with another wrestling star. We've seen him in the past at CCW. Now he's a part of Firestar Pro Wrestling, where some NSAW talent have been. That is also BMD. So Mr. BMD will be back with us Sunday night. Very, very excited to be with BMD. And we're very, very excited right now to be with Mixed Nights. And Mixed Nights is always somebody that we love speaking with here on Sportswire Radio. We thank MX Nights for their support, but I've got some comments kind of based off reaction, so let's get to that here. And Callum says, wait, who's getting killed? Also, Michael Noel says, it's also great to see MX Nights. Always made me feel welcome in NSAW's home. Well, I could definitely see why. We love everything that MX Nights always does, along with the rest of the wonderful company called Nonstop Action Wrestling. And Skulls says it sounds like someone has a death wish that Skulls has to collect the soul. So I guess, Skulls, you're going to be collecting Donnie Franchise's soul. Is that what you're telling us here? Which I think some people might actually think that's the case. But Remus Keynes got an interesting comment. Listen, when the so-called franchise wants to try and embarrass one of our own, we don't hold back. We hit back and make sure that the one to blame never wants to mess with us again. Kyle Kennedy will ruin the franchise and end this history with Donnie broken and bruised inside and out. Boy, very, very strong words. The upgrade, Callum the Jakester says, FTF, fill in the blanks, the franchise. Jenny Hayes jumps in, says, Donnie will get his comeuppance. The blood of the society is thicker than the blood of yours. We will spill. Skulls made a good point on our Wednesday show, which I think kind of now realize this. It reminds me of when AJ Styles went dark toward the end of his TNA run. That makes sense. It's going to be a really emotional match between them two. It gives me Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair, WrestleMania. What was that? 24, I think that was. As we know, when Shawn ended Ric Flair's career that night. Good news, Lightning Kid, his trainer from the EWF is out of a coma, so that's very, very good news that Skulls' trainer is out of a coma. We always want to hear good stuff with that. But I want to ask you one final question on Kennedy and franchise, and then I want to move on to actually Killjoy, which I know you're going to have interesting thoughts on. I'm going to get to why I think he's interesting in a second. But when it comes to something like this, and you talk about maybe in a way, we've had a lot with Kyle Kennedy in the past. We've spoken about the fact he's been a world champion. He's got the tag titles. He's been a guy. He's crossed in the ring with Gareth Angel, Tommy Dillon. We spoke about that. Champ Rogers, Connor Cage. He's had some wars. But maybe in a way, this is going to be the match that springboards a Kyle Kennedy to even further heights, just on what I kind of think his dance partner that night, Donnie Franchise, is going to bring out of him. Give me your thoughts on that.
I think you're going to see a side of Kyle Kennedy that night that not only have you not seen before, that you wouldn't have thought of before. The the power that someone can draw on when they are that emotionally beaten and damaged, the rage that can be pushed into something, into an outlet, is incredible. And if nothing else, you may start seeing Carl Kennedy and the rest of the society in many more promotions very, very soon, because this year will be the year that the matches won't be fun. They won't be for audience entertainment. We are here to make a name for ourselves. We are going to carve that path.
I have no doubt that you guys are well on your way to doing that, because we've obviously seen what you guys have done in great places like CCW, UKW, Blackheart Wrestling, GT Ministries at times. So I have no doubt that the society is on its way to bigger and better things. And what has always been the motto of the society for the past year plus? You guys are everywhere. So there's no question that the society is everywhere, even in the places that you least expected. And that's why the society holds those tag team championships and could even be more championships in the future. Stay tuned. Also, Michael Noel says it's definitely going to be a match that will go down in history. I think in a lot of ways, and I know the tag title match is going to get a lot of certainly recognition at Deadline. I have no doubt the Rumble, Gareth Angel being in it is a big deal. I know that's going to be big. There'll be more matches announced. Sammy Blue is going to be in action, but I mean, I think that match between Donnie and Kyle Kennedy is going to be, to me, the match of the night. I think that's the match that I just think, because of the storyline, because of everything that's involved in it, what we saw Wednesday night on Sportswire, I think that's the match that, if I were to put my hard-earned pounds on, that's the one I want to see. But speaking of it, and I know your brethren in the society are a little upset I'm going to bring him up, but I have to bring him up, and that is Dan Robertson, Killjoy, because obviously, first, I want to go back in time and talk about what I think you guys have been trying to give him. How can I put this in a is it NB love? Is it brotherly love? I don't know what it is, but you guys have been trying to tell him basically to focus on his own path, do things that could help him in a way to advance his career, not so much yet want to be Remus Kane's best friend and join you guys. And first, I mean, I have to get your reactions toward that, and why Mr. Killjoy hasn't seemed to kind of grasp that, what you guys have been trying to give him this reality so far.
We've really tried.
Yeah.
And I cannot stress this so much. And Mr. Robertson is a genuine talent, and he's an interesting person.
Very interesting. I mean, I like the guy. I have his shirt. I've had him on. I like him. I genuinely like him, I have to say.
My issue is he's very 19th century cultist, and it doesn't run well with us. It's not the kind of environment we want to put in there. And to be quite honest, if the society was going to recruit, we wouldn't go for someone so needy. We don't need people who are incapable of having the confidence in themselves to know when they're doing good, and don't need that constant, assurance, that approval, that yes, you're doing a good job, Dan. Yes, you're doing a good job, Dan. I swear. Yeah, you bring that cup of tea, and it feels like you get to a point where if he's not willing to have that faith in himself and that confidence in himself to push himself to the next level, he has no place with us. At the most, he's an overexcited intern.
Oh, if there was ever a burn that I just heard, basically calling him an overexcited intern. Wow. I mean, they used to say that's a pencil pusher, coffee getter. I mean, errand boy, manservant. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the proper respectful terms. It sounds like that's kind of similar to that. And I have some follow-up comments toward that before I ask a follow-up question to that. Can we not talk about Killjoy? He's insufferable as it is. And also, the lawman Kyle Kennedy says, a moment of calm and serenity will come over me come Deadline on the 29th. The voices leave the hurt stops and the destruction truly begins. Kind of basically what you had to say here. Killjoy is killing my joy. The door. It caps locks from Jenny Hayes. Wow, that's certainly. Coward Boy is here, meaning Killjoy himself. And Remus Kane says, "I feel sick at the thought of him even being thought of as being my best friend. I keep seeing Killjoy logos everywhere. I've had to change my house as many times due to his." I was gonna say, if Remus Kane has locks, I'm sure he would change the lock. But knowing Remus Kane, I don't think he'd be a lock guy, so he probably would just change houses and say, you know what, I'm Remus Kane. I'm certainly just would have to change my address, change where I am. So Killjoy kind of avoids it, and Skulls even gives kind of a funny emoji. Phantom Phoenix does say, "Screw this society." Michael Lowell says, "I'm not a fan of the society, but please for me, kick his fill in the blank." Sure, you know where I'm going with that. So I guess Michael is on the society side for this one. Fill in the blanks your mom. Wait, I already did when it came to Phantom Phoenix. Phantom Phoenix also says, "Calama Jake, so you might want to wash your mouth out because I don't know where she's been for the past 20 years. I'm going to let those two individuals sort that out. Maybe one day we'll get them on Sportswire before the 29th. My schedule is going to be open certainly after next Thursday, so that could certainly be a possibility. I like Dan, but he needs to stop trying to be besties. It ain't going to happen." All right, so let me ask you a follow-up on that. Even on Kyle Kennedy's rather pedestrian comment about he likes Dan Robertson, but he needs to stop being besties to you guys. Now, interesting to note that while we recapped kind of how you guys think of Dan Robertson, we're about to speak here, is going to be in action at Miners Mania 2 for Cutlery Championship Wrestling. He's actually going to be in the main event as one of the 6 participants for the Underground Heavyweight Championship. And then tomorrow, he's going to be in action against Supersonic Sammy Blue for the Northern Division Championship. So let me ask you a follow-up question to this and tell me your thoughts. Let's say hypothetically tonight, there's a possibility Dan Robertson wins that Underground Heavyweight Championship, and then tomorrow he goes in there and wins the Northern Division Championship. Would you and let's say the rest of the society's title or song change a bit, or the tune would change if, let's say, hypothetically, Dan Robertson goes out tonight, walks away with the Underground Heavyweight Championship to represent NSAW, and then takes Sammy Blue's title tomorrow to be the Northern Division Championship? Would you guys' song change here a bit with the tune?
I'm really trying my best to put myself in a mindset where I can imagine Dan Robertson winning not only 1 belt but 2 belts. Give me a moment. Okay. Yeah, you know what? If Dan Robertson tonight takes the title at Miners Mania, and then tomorrow goes on to beat Sammy Blue and takes the Northern Division belt, then absolutely, I will corral the entire society and we will personally go to his home to thank him, to congratulate him, and to welcome him into the flock. But I can guarantee you that won't happen.
All right. I mean, there's a chance. I mean, I realize. I think I brought this up on Wednesday's show at Sportswire about him having a chance, and it was. I think Kennedy kind of cracked a smile, and I think he was trying as hard to kind of, I guess, hold it all in. But he has technically the same chance as even a Grayson Riley, a Slugger Hampton, Hybrid, obviously the current champion. I mean, some other big names and big stars who actually have had that kind of big success and who might be credible contenders. So he has as good a chance as everybody in that match. So, I mean, hypothetically, he has the same chance as everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, he could hide under the ring for the majority of the match and spring out at the last minute. Like, absolutely. He's got a chance. I just believe that chance is not worth considering at the moment.
Okay, well, you know, it's totally fair, and I totally respect the honesty. I know a lot of people, when I bring his name up all together, say Dan Robertson, and they kind of look at him as certainly a punchline. I mean, look at what Gareth Angel and Jack Johnson did to him, and we've seen other situations with him, but he did get a victory over young Horace at Fatal Attraction, so he's walking into this with some momentum, and if he wins the championship, I mean, Sammy Blue would certainly be I guess for the first time, he would be going up against somebody that has a bigger title than his, and maybe that could propel him to being the guy that everybody talks about in pro wrestling, and maybe you guys would have to consider him then.
Absolutely. And like I say, should that day ever arrive where Dan Robertson comes in with, not like I say, not just one, but two titles, two whole titles on that one Dan Robertson. Yeah, absolutely. If
Well,
it happens, we will throw him a little gathering ourselves. We will be very, very happy for it.
well, I'll say this at this point. I will say this about Dan Robertson. It might be a victory for him just to come out of Miners Mania 2 in one piece, considering the big names that he's going to be in the ring with. I would probably say, because I've had a lot of those guys on Sportswire, if he comes out of there in one piece, considering how tough, rugged, and kind of hardcore or underground you might want to say those guys are, like a Grayson Riley with his background, Slugger Hampton, well documented, and certainly a hybrid who's got a shoot fighting background. If Robertson walks away in one piece going into tomorrow, back to the Be Strong Performance Center, that might be his biggest victory. But listen, stranger things have happened in the wrestling world, so I guess he has a chance here. But I have some comments on that, so let's piggyback off that. I doubt Callum would agree with that, and I don't blame him personally, meaning when it comes to Dan Robertson. Jenny Hayes says, just like the unwanted kittens in the river, I will put a bag on Killjoy's head and throw him off the bridge. Wow, we've got murder, we've got throwing people off bridges tonight on Sportswire. We are definitely running the gauntlet on here. Kyle Kennedy says here, of all people, the calmness from Kyle Kennedy. Regardless of who wins tomorrow, they're on the society radar. 2023 ends with all of us holding all the gold, which I think we've talked about here on prior Sportswire shows. Remus Kane here says, Gareth Angel and Jack Johnson are nothing. They only know their little safe bubbles that have been isolating themselves in a GTM and BTW. Compared to Dan, they are nobodies. At least Dan is something, even if only an insect. And, to be fair, I don't know if that's the opening for Remus Kane, but there is a point that has been made that Dan Robertson got the attention of Gareth Angel and Jack Johnson. He got their attention, got in a ring with them. Slugger Hampton got his attention here in the past on Sportswire. Those guys have been main eventers. Those guys have been champions. Those guys have been all over the place, and he got their attention without really having to do anything. So maybe that's credit to where credit's due, and Dan Robertson's in the main event. I mean, Gareth
Oh,
Angel, he won't even address Disciple, who's your company's champion. Jack Johnson hasn't stepped foot into Ensaw. He's the Bolton Town champion. I mean, he beat Disciple. I mean, so at the end of the day, I mean, maybe Dan Robertson's doing something right. I don't know. I'll let Mr. Robertson one of these days address those things. And Rebus also says, it's not hard to get the attention of a small fish in a small pond. Ooh, interesting comments. I'm going to plead the fifth on that. But I'm going to bring it back to this weekend coming up. Obviously, we have a show coming up, and anything else you want to talk about toward this show here coming up tomorrow? We have another Asylum Lockdown 3 coming up here. And for those that are listening and watching, I know we'll obviously, I'm sure, talk about it here in the coming days and weeks on Sportswire. Anything else you want to share toward that?
only that I think it would be a absolute shame to spoil the fun of knowing what's to come. And unfortunately, I don't think I'm allowed
Yeah,
to
don't
give
do
you much more
anything. Listen,
detail.
I said this a little while ago. Don't do anything that you know you shouldn't, especially you, because obviously you're a part of the society. You are in management. You and Snow have sort of that back and forth there where you're trying to be that one person, kind of the voice for the society. You've got the rest in management, whether it's Champ Rogers, whether it's Joshua Snow, that are certainly trying to give a different perspective, and certainly want to make sure that you don't do anything here toward that. But I do have a comment from Michael Knowles before we move on to a few other things in closing thoughts. Let's be honest, and that's a very, very, very big if here, and I put the very extra. If he can pull it off, he won't. Will he be able to stand after? I mean, look at Fatal Attraction. He couldn't stand, and he would be with a belt wouldn't be able to walk with the belt. He would basically would be weighed down from that. I mean, do you think the belt actually, the CCW Underground Heavyweight title, is actually bigger than Dan Robertson? Is that actually something we could compare on Sportswire?
I would
I've
like to
seen
see
that belt.
that. I would like to see that. I'm sure we can get him. We can convince him to lay in the street and just put it on the floor next to him. He's definitely the type that would agree to that without any kind of forewarning.
I don't even know if Dan Robertson weighs like 1 stone, 2 stones, and that belt's got to be worth more stones than him. Actually, I was actually able to figure out the UK translation for pounds, so I think everybody would appreciate that here. So I don't even know if Dan Robertson would weigh like 1 stone, 2 stones at this point. So that'll be, I guess, if he wins tonight and we have him on, I guess we'll find out. But Skull says no curveball here, no curveballs from MX Nights here about our big Lockdown 3. It'll be a great show, undoubtedly. I mean, anything else you want to share? I mean, Zenith, I think, is going to be big. I think we'll obviously, I'm sure, in the coming weeks have tickets on sale for that. I mean, anything else and that you think is important towards Zenith that we should know about?
To keep your eye on the society. And because, yes, you're right, I am the voice of the society, and I feel like I need to speak for them. Zenith is going to be a great show. Non-stop action wrestling will always pull out every stop to make it the best show you will see. But don't for a second think that the society aren't going to be the main event of that show. Doesn't matter where they are, it doesn't matter what we're doing, whether it's, defending the tag team championships or some more interesting singles runs that you'll get to
Well,
find out about.
I have one more official question for you because I would almost feel like, because I know I'm going to bring him back to Sportswire soon, and I almost feel like I have to ask you due diligence on this because Gareth Angel obviously is a name we spoke about quite a bit here and there on Sportswire, and we know that he's going to be a deadline at the Rumble on the 29th at the University of Huddersfield. And I almost have to ask this question because he was with Connor Cage training over at the Fountains Church there in GT Ministries. They obviously have Thursday training sessions, and he filmed a video with Connor Cage in the background. And obviously Connor Cage is a big star for you guys in nonstop action wrestling. The Golden Boy have called him here, and I almost have to ask you. I mean, speaking of people, I mean, would you think there'll ever be a day that maybe we'd see a Gareth Angel show up here in Nonstop Action Wrestling, especially because we're seeing him show up at Deadline in the Rumble? I mean, I almost have to ask you that question.
I would say at this point, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
You wouldn't be opposed to you of all people. Wow. Okay.
I think it would be a great opportunity to meet Mr. Angel on home ground.
Really? So you've met him at the Fountains Church, I would imagine, but you haven't met him here at the Be Strong Performance Center. Interesting.
I think it would be a good opportunity to show him the world outside of his little bubble and show him the wide range of wrestling that not only non-stop action wrestling have to offer, but every other company that we interact with. There's such a fascinating scene in the UK when it comes to wrestling, and I think sticking inside your bubble is just doing yourself a disservice. So come and let us show you how good UK wrestling can truly be.
You know, it's fascinating that you said that because obviously Mr. Angel these past, I would say 3 or 4 years, has been really focused on GT Ministries, and they have another show coming up here next week as well, which I'm sure certain individuals that we know in Nonstop Action Wrestling are going to be a part of. I have high authority on that, but I can't confirm or deny who that individual would be, so stay tuned, I'm sure, for their socials on GT Ministries pages, GT Ministries UK. But that has been something that many have said about Mr. Angel. He has been the GT Ministries only guy, and that's his baby. But maybe now it's time to go to other places. See if what Remus Kane says is true. You're this small fish in a small pond, or you really are this guy that's been this big star that's been on the BBC, that's been out there and all these massive interviews you've done and these massive shows, and you've been this guy that's drawn hundreds and hundreds of people, and maybe it's time to test your foot in other places. I don't know. But comments here galore. I will be rebooking Zenith. You shall see me again. MX Nights and Sword nonstop. Never stop seeing me at your events. Yeah, we never want to not stop seeing you at the events. We want to see all these great events, no matter where they be. So wherever you may roam, Michael knows, make sure you're always at a nonstop action wrestling show. Your certainly counterpart in management, Joshua Snow, says, well, it's a shame Zenith was delayed, but we can both agree, despite our differences, that this is going to be our biggest show for a reason. Amen. 1,000%. You can count on Sportswire Radio covering it throughout these next several weeks. So you can count on our support as always. You may not be Richard, but that man is the antithesis, the opposite of everything we stand for. To have him anywhere near us, to invite his destruction, something I would gladly give him. I think he's talking about Gareth Angel here, which is the polar opposite of the society. So, listen, that's why it could be interesting. I mean, certainly, and by the way, as a way to kind of maybe let Mr. Kane's heart not be troubled, I am sure that Mr. Disciple will certainly welcome the carpet for him because, again, Mr. Disciple's the one that gave Mr. Angel the beating that nobody has ever given him in a wrestling ring before. So I am sure that Mr. Kane, that Mr. Disciple is out there, and I'm sure that he would certainly be the first one to greet Mr. Angel more than anyone else because A, he's the company's champion, and B, he's the man that Mr. Angel still hasn't crossed paths with yet, and it's been 6 months. So I would say, I am sure that if Mr. Angel decides to step foot into nonstop action wrestling, that I'm sure that Disciple would be the first to greet him on. So
Yeah, I
before
mean,
closing thoughts,
absolutely.
yeah, jump in.
They would welcome him with open arms. And just to touch on something, I don't actually think that Gareth Angel and the Society are too dissimilar. I think we're quite alike. We both come from large power structures that control masses of people, and we like to see ourselves as above everyone, as above the rest, above the curve. Well, that's because we know globally that we are the best.
Hey, I said I've been covering you guys for a year, and I have said that you guys are everywhere. I have said that. Objectively speaking, the society is everywhere, even when you least see it.
Exactly. And I think it would be nice for Gareth to get the opportunity to see what things could be like if he allowed himself to, flex his wings a little bit. And if Disciple happens to be locked in a room backstage with him, that's none of my business.
Well, I'm going to plead the fifth on that. Certainly, Remus agrees, says, well, that's the only similarity. At least we know how to use our power. And he also says, I'm not worried. I'd be the one to meet him first, if only to knock him out before he walks through the door. But I still say Disciple is going to be that person first to greet him because Mr. Disciple and Mr. Angel, they certainly have some unfinished business. And I'm still very, very, very interested to see what happens with those two individuals because we don't know what's going to happen there with that. So obviously, a lot of great stuff here. Certainly, everybody again. Nonstop Action Wrestling Zenith is going to take place May the 27th. So your unofficial kickoff to summer. It's going to be a great weekend for wrestling for May 27th. And Zenith is going to be a part of that. Nonstop Action Wrestling, all their socials, please follow. I'm going to ask you a last question for a lighter note, kind of a way to kind of bring things back and give everybody on a good foot here for the weekend. The blue hair color, I'm a fan of. I have to say, how did you pull off you've got the, I don't know if you're pulling this off. You got the 80s new wave look a little bit. You've got the, I'm trying to think, not quite Depeche Mode, not quite certainly, I'm trying to think of The Cure, Robert Smith. I'm trying to think of some of the other new wave acts. I don't know. Are you a new wave fan? Are you pulling off a new wave look? You have to talk because you have a different hair color from the last time you came on Sports.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of the side effects of the kind of work we're in. My hair changes color quite regularly. This color happens to be from a particularly nasty job, but we'll not get into it. If you can see, there's like sort of a weird green shimmer.
Yeah, I do see that. Yeah, I do see that.
You can't put a Geiger counter near me. It's a really bad idea right now.
Okay. I definitely I thought for a lighter note to kind of make everybody, crack a smile a little bit that I did notice a different hair color from the last time you came on. And I did kind of notice the new wave vibe. But I don't know if you're a fan of new wave or not, or that 80s kind of Cure, Depeche Mode vibe. But I did kind of notice that look a little bit. That's all.
Yeah, definitely more 80s hair metal. Much prefer it. Please let's get your pants there.
Well, I know Steel Panther, obviously. That I know very well. Yes, and I do know 80s metal. In fact, I have one funny story I have to actually share about 80s hair metal. There's actually somebody I know. There's a band called White Lion that actually was very big, and the guitarist was a guy, Vito Bratta. He was supposed to be the next Eddie Van Halen. He looked like him. He played like him. He's actually somebody that lives about 5 minutes from my house, and I actually sort of know him. He's like this total recluse. He basically stopped playing guitar, but he was kind of they were big. They had two big songs, and they had a multi-platinum album. They were signed to Atlantic Records, and he's somebody I actually sort of know, and he still looks like Eddie Van Halen a little bit before Eddie Van Halen croaked, obviously, and cut his hair. But yeah, that's my '80s hair metal story of a band I actually sort of know. But that's okay. But last comments before closing thoughts. I was gonna say, hey, Michael knows likes the hair, so and Remus says. Richard has always looked the best of all of us. He goes to you for fashion advice. Well, that's obviously why you're here with us on Sportswire Radio, and that's why we wanted to get you on. No, we wanted to get you on because obviously a lot to talk about in NSOS. It wasn't about the blue hair. It was obviously about Zenith. It was about the society. It was about lockdown tomorrow. But I know you're a busy man. You've got a lot going on here. I'm a busy person. Apologies on that. You have a lot going on here on the plate, and I wanted to make sure I get that right correctly. So I want to make sure for those that are listening and watching. But I want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, say, and hope to have you back in a lot shorter time than from the last time. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure speaking to you, Tom. I would like to just really drive home for those of you, if you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard of the society, go and check each and every member out. We are incredible. We've got Remus Kane, who has controversially the best spine buster in wrestling. I would be quite happy to see him and Disciple settle that score.
Well, that'd be a good point. That's a good point. Good point.
We've got Jenny Hayes, who is an absolute rising star and incredible talent in the ring, and obviously a star in her own right. Her performances, she tours up and down the country, and she's very useful for attracting a crowd. We've got Kyle Kennedy, our absolute beast, who is unstoppable. He will only get better and only get more momentum, and you need to be watching out for him. And even our most recent recruit, Callum Shakespeare, Callum is our upgrade. He is the one who has truly set the bar for what we expect of anyone coming to us. And you are about to see a side of that person that you have never dreamed of.
Strong words, and I think I owe Callum Jakester an appearance on Sportswire, and I owe a shirt purchase from him because Pro Wrestling Tees, we have a Callum Jakester page. We also have a Lawman Kyle Kennedy page. So we have a lot of society brethren that have merchandise. And I think, I'm almost certain of this, Jenny Hayes. I purchased your CD, and I don't think I ever got it. I actually purchased Jenny Hayes' CD in the mail, and for whatever reason, I don't think I ever got it. So unless somebody in my house just didn't get the mail, but I'm almost certain I never got her CD. So well, I'll rectify that with Jenny undoubtedly. But in the meantime, Nonstop, never stop. Please follow Nonstop Action Wrestling, NSOR Wrestling UK on Instagram, Nonstop Action Wrestling on Facebook, NSOR Rest _UK on Twitter, YouTube, Nonstop Action Wrestling, and MX Knights. Thank you for the opportunity. As always, I'm looking forward to all great things ahead for Nonstop Action Wrestling, and certainly Lockdown 3 when that time comes to be aired live. And thank you as always, my friend. Don't be a stranger, and we are definitely everywhere when it comes to the society, and certainly I'm looking forward to watching the group in action at Wrestling Appreciation Society, April the 29th, at University of Huddersfield. Thank you as always, my friend, and we'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was MX Knights from Management's Nonstop Action Wrestling and also from the Society to announce here that May the 27th, we will see coming up here Zenith, the newly announced date. Stay tuned for more matches and news to follow from that. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, the host and owner of Sportswire Radio. We will be back here at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time with WrestleMania 39 coverage with Sportswire Radio's Randy Dillon and from the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, Chris Belcher. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming. Thank you, everybody, and good night. For now, on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio, and also Remus Kane Pro Tees Wrestling Shop is on the way as well, and I will make sure to support that. So Remus Kane, I'll be in touch, and I'll make sure to buy a shirt as well. Thank you, and good night, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are on Sportswire Radio, the number one